And I'm John Knoerzer.
And we're here to do a rules tutorial video for the original Avalon Hills civilization.
Using the Advanced Civilization expansion and rule set.
Now, the original Civ was published in 1982, with the expansion being published in 1991. Neither one of these should be confused for Sid Meier's Civilization the board game, or the also coincidentally named Sid Meier's Civilization the board game, one with a space between board and game and one without. These are the original games from much, much earlier.
Now this is an all-day affair game, normally takes about anywhere from 6 to 12 hours. So there's a lot of rules to go over. So we're actually going to split this video into two videos. Beth is going to do the basic explanation of the game in video number 1, and I will be doing a detailed explanation of the Calamities and Civilization Advancement cards in video number 2.
So you're about to watch video number 1, which is the general rules overview. If you'd like to see John's more specific in detail view, then go back to Board Game Geek TV on YouTube and check out part 2. But for now, let's talk about setting up the game. Setup for Advanced Civilization is relatively simple. Each player is going to choose one civilization. By the rules, this selection is supposed to be random, but over multiple plays, we found nothing wrong with just choosing selectively as long as everybody at the table is alright with that. Now, from your bag of goodies, you're going to have a pile of cities, which are circular tokens, boats, which are rectangular tokens, and people and goods, which are square tokens. Now, from these square ones, you want to pull out, there's 2 that have the name of your civilization on them. We're going to be putting those on the AST track. We're going to talk about those next. Now, from your pile of square tokens here, they'll have pictures of people on one side and clay jars on the other side. Check the rules to see how many of these tokens are supposed to be used in this game, because the amount differs depending on the number of players. Now, once everyone has their piles of things set up here in the stock, you're going to select one person and you're going to place it anywhere that you see your civilization's color along the edge of the board. So for example, I might place here in this number 4 region. And now I'm ready to start the game. Now, before everyone starts their first turn, we're going to do a little setup over here on the AST, or the Archaeological Succession Table. Now, everyone's going to take their chip in their player color and place it by their civilization's name. So I'm putting my Egypt chip here next to the word Egypt. This is the AST. This determines some parts of turn order during particular points in the round, and it also will give everyone a good idea of where they stand in the game and will indicate when we trigger the end of the game. Now, the other chart that you can see right next to the AST is the census track. Now, this measures how many people are on the board for each given civilization. Now, we know from setting up the board just a moment ago that I, as Egypt, have put out 1 unit out on the board. So my census number right now is 1, as is everybody for the first turn of the game. So we've just got a big pile here all at 1. Now, ties are broken by the number on these chips. So Africa as number 1 is going to break the tie. So that's why I put Africa here on top. And actually, as Egypt, I'm going to go last because my number is highest. So make sure you put the chip with the name and the number over here on the census track, and the plain chip with just your name over here on the AST. And finally, we're going to set up the decks for the trade cards, or the commodity cards. Now, there's 9 different piles, so from the whole stack of commodity cards, you're going to want to shuffle up all of these ones that have a large number in the middle. For the moment, pull aside all of these ones with black and white pictures. These are the calamities. We're going to be placing those at particular points in the deck. So from all the number 1 commodity cards, you're just going to shuffle those up and place those face down on the number 1 stack. Now, all the other numbers here, not only are you going to shuffle up numbers of the like pile, but you're also going to be seeding in very specifically the calamity cards. Now there's two types of calamities, those that have red text which say non-tradable at the top, and those that do not. We're going to start with the ones that do not have anything red text at all. You're going to count out the number of cards equal to the number of players. In our sample game here we have 7 players, so I'm going to count out 7 cards. From the remaining cards, I'm going to take this tradable calamity and shuffle it in somewhere into the remaining part of the deck. And then I'm going to seed these 7 clean cards on top. This ensures that no one's going to get hosed by a calamity very, very, very early on in the game. Now, by the rules, you're supposed to put this non-tradable calamity as the very last card in the bottom of the deck. But those who are able to count cards are pretty good at predicting exactly when this is going to come out. So it is strongly suggested, although again, not officially part of the rules, to take the bottom 3 cards, shuffle up that non-tradable calamity into the bottom 3. So it's not exactly predictable. And now your pile for the level 2 commodity cards are ready. You're going to repeat that process for each of the remaining piles until all of these stacks are complete. Phase 1 is collect taxes. You only have to worry about collecting taxes if you have cities on the board, which at the beginning of the game you will not. But as you build cities later on, you're going to collect 2 chips of taxes for each city that you own. Now with my 2 sample cities here, that means I'm going to collect 4 chips of taxes. These tax chips are the opposite side of your unit tokens here. So I'm going to flip 4 of them over to their clay jar side and place them here in my treasury. And now I have appropriately collected taxes for my 2 cities. In the rare instance you don't have enough stock to move the appropriate amount over to your treasury, then you're going to enter into a treasury revolt. Essentially, a certain amount of your cities are going to be given to other players in the game. It can be really, really devastating, but again, it is quite rare. Just refer to the rules about how to resolve a treasury revolt if it unfortunately occurs to you. The second phase is population expansion. You're going to be adding additional units from your stock to the board. If you have a single unit within a region, then it's going to spawn another single unit. If you have any amount more than 1 in a single region, then that region is going to spawn 2 additional units. If you are not able to fully expand, if you're short in your stock and you're not able to put out the correct amount of pieces, then simply take everything that you can and you may place them and shortchange which regions as you wish. The third phase is census. This is when we add up how many units we have on the board and then move our chip to the appropriate number here on the census track. I have 2 units, so I'm going to move my chip to the number 2. And in fact, everyone will have 2 units for this first round in the game, and it will be an all-player tie for the first 3 rounds. To break ties, we're going to go in AST order. Now, you don't know how to calculate AST order yet, and in fact, we're not going to describe that until we get down to phase 16, which is movement along the AST track. So just stay tuned, and we'll explain that a little bit later. Census order is important because it determines who is going to get to move first in the upcoming Phase 5. The fourth phase is ship construction and maintenance. And this is where you're going to be building ships if you wish. Now, the cost of a ship is either 2 tokens from your treasury back to your stock, or 2 figures from a coastal region on the board back to the stock, or a combination of 1 and 1. And that would be enough to build a ship. Now, if you fund a ship entirely from your treasury, then that ship can go in any coastal area where you have at least 1 token or city. If you fund a ship using any amount of tokens from the board, it's called a levy, it's like this, then that ship has to go in the region where you removed the people. So basically you're sacrificing that person to turn them into a ship. Now, if you already have a ship on the board, it costs 1 token from either your treasury or a unit from the board to maintain that ship. So if I had 3 ships in existence, I would have to pay 3 tokens, again, for any combination of levies from the board and tokens from my treasury to pay for those ships. Now, if I don't want to maintain a ship, it just reverts back to my stock. And it is permissible to basically let a ship expire and then immediately pay for it by building it somewhere else. So that is permissible to sort of immediately transport a ship by letting it die and then having it create in a different location. The 5th phase is movement, and the order in which we move is determined by census order, which we figured out in phase 3. When it's my turn to move, I may, it is optional, move any of my land-based units 1 region away. I may move them individually, or I can move them together as a collection. If I'd like my land units to use a boat, then their movement is considered the getting on and getting off the boat. And the boat itself may move up to 4 coastal regions away, although it is not yet allowed to head out here into the deep ocean. So this boat could move 1, 2, 3, and then the land units will disembark. And that would be the end of my movement. The 6th phase is conflict. Now, if it turns out that there's no conflict on the board, you can skip right over this phase, which is going to happen quite a few times. Now, conflict occurs anytime an area has 2 or more civilizations in it, and it exceeds the population limit printed in that area. So, for example, this area here, which has 1 Babylonian unit in it, has a limit of only 1 unit. If during my movement phase, which is phase 5, if I move my units into this area, we exceed that population unit. And there's 2 different civilizations in this area, so this is now an area of conflict. By contrast, if I had moved my units over here, there's a population limit of 3 in this area. So we don't exceed that number, so even though there's 2 different civs in here, we exist peacefully because we haven't exceeded that number. But we want to see what a fight looks like, so we're going to reset back to our original location. Now, when you're getting ready to resolve a fight, you're going to figure out which civ is the weaker opponent. So in this case, it would be Babylon with 1 unit versus my stronger force of 2. The weaker opponent is going to remove a chip first, and then you're going to alternate removing chips until one of 2 conditions is met. Either 1 civilization is completely annihilated in that area, or if you get down to that population limit number. Now, in this example, Babylon's going to remove a chip first because they are the weaker opponent, and as luck turns out, that's the end of the conflict because now I am the only remaining civilization in that area. Now, to look at a slightly more complicated fight, let's say I move, during my movement phase again, I move those 2 units into this area, and I boat in some other units from further on down in the Nile region. I now have 5 units versus Babylon's 3. Babylon would start first and remove a unit, then me, then Babylon, then me, then Babylon again, and now I am the only remaining victor in that area. Now finally, if you are attacking a city is much more powerful, and only if you come at it with 7 or more troops are you ever going to be able to tackle it. If you throw any amount of troops less than 7 at a city, they're just going to automatically die. Now, if I am able to move 7 units into that city, as I am here by moving all of those troops into the area, the city is going to be immediately converted into 6 population. And at that point, we're going to start that back and forth game again. Since I have 7, I am the stronger force, 7 or more. So Babylon's going to start removing first, and you will have enough to completely reduce the city, which is why you need to come in with at least 7 to overcome the fact that a city is essentially worth 6 troops. Now again, remember, if you get down to that population limit, even though there might be remaining troops left of both civilizations, at that point the conflict will stop. Phase 7 is city construction. If you can get 6 tokens into one region that has a black or a white square, then you can trade in those 6 land units for a city from your supply. If you'd like to build a city in a region that has no square in it, that's considered a wilderness city and is going to force you to turn in a whopping 12 units for 1 city token. Wilderness cities are no different than other cities, aside from the fact that they cost double. The 8th phase is remove surplus tokens. So any area that you exceed the number printed in that region. So for example, there is a 1 here, and I have 2 units in this area. I'm going to have to remove those units back to my stock until I am at or below that number. So I'd have to knock this area down to 1. Any region that has a city in it also cannot have units in it once you've built the city. So any areas with a city are also going to be thrown away back to my stock. And any regions where I am at or below that number, I can just leave them be. If I have a boat does not count towards my region limitation, so the boat can just stay where it is. And now we're ready to talk about city support. Phase 9 is checking for city support. Each one of your cities requires 2 units on the board to survive. So in my example here, I have 4 cities, one of which is a wilderness city, which took 12 units to create. And so consequently, I'm going to need 8 units out on the board to support them, which luckily is exactly what I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, if that were not the case, let's say I only had 5 units out on the board, I'm going to have to start reducing some cities until I have the proper number that I can support with the 5 units I have on the board. Now, when you reduce a city, you're going to reduce it down to the number of units that are printed here in the square. So if I removed this wilderness city, which took 12 units to complete, it would reduce all the way down to the single unit that is allowed in this area, which would be devastating. But my best move here, if I'm short for city support, would be to reduce this city, which would require me to reduce it only down to 5. Now once I've reduced 1 city, I'm now going to check again to see if I have enough troops to support my remaining 3 cities. And now with the addition of 5 more troops, I now have a total of 10 units on the board, and I certainly have enough to support my remaining 3 cities. So everyone is going to reduce their cities if necessary until everyone is properly supported.